Hey guys, it's Paul from Montana. I just got done replacing all the fuel lines on my 1997 Sea-Doo GTI 717 Rotax, and I thought I'd make this video to try to maybe help out and give other people some tips if they're trying to do this job. First of all, this job is really easy. I was kind of like dreading it. I'm like, oh, here goes a half a day of screwing around, you know. It probably took 45 minutes. It was not that hard. Don't be afraid to do it. It's not hard. First thing you got to do is go buy yourself 25 feet of 1/4 inch inside diameter SPI blue fuel line. 25 feet will get you there. You'll only have a couple feet to spare, so it's the perfect length. Secondly, remove the cubby box or whatever this is called. Also, you need to remove the air box in the flash suppressing system that's bolted to the top of your carburetor. Get that all out of the way. Now you can see everything that you're doing. Those two things will take you 10 minutes. It's not tough to do. And then just start replacing fuel lines one at a time. Pull the end off on one side, trace it where it goes back, pull the other end off, pull it out of there, cut your new line to length, and put it back together. I used zip ties. There's a couple areas where I still have to put zip ties on here. I ran out of my good fuel. I like to use good OMC, like outboard zip ties that kind of have like a curved end on them, so they really bite on there real nice. So I came up short, so I still got a few joints here to do. But a lot of this machine had them hose clamped on with those nice hose clamps, which I don't know if that's factory or not. Maybe somebody already did this job. I have no idea. This is an old machine, and I'm at least the third owner probably. But anyhow, I got all the gray fuel lines out. Everybody they're there in the garbage. Everybody in the internet world says get rid of those. They cause some kind of blue goo in your fuel system eventually, and maybe they get really hard and start coming apart. I don't really know the details of that because I didn't have trouble with it. And honestly, these lines look pretty good. I cut them open, and they're pretty pliable and pretty good still. But I figured this is good maintenance. Might as well do it. So that's the basics of it. 25 feet of that good line. Get yourself some of those nice marine fuel line zip ties with the curved end on them. Remove your flash suppressor system. Take off your glove box, and you're off and running. Like I said, if you just do one line at a time, you can't screw this up. It's really pretty simple. Just route them through where they came from and put them back on. Make sure they're snug, pushed, seated all the way down as far as they'll go on the fuel nipple. Make sure you get your clamps or your zip ties nice and snug, and you won't have any troubles. So I guess from this too, I've learned kind of how the fuel system is put together, so I'm going to take a whack at this. Again, I'm not a mechanic. Don't believe everything I say, but this is how I understand it. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot. Some of these factory fittings had those. It's like a crimped on stainless steel fitting. You can see it right there in the center of the picture. It's like a crimped on hose clamp. I'm not really sure how you release those. I suppose if you had a really good pair of super sharp dikes, you could just cut them. I used a Dremel, and it was super easy. I just cut right through them with a Dremel. However, beware, throw sparks. There's gas in this thing. Is that smart? No, probably not. So I'm telling you right now, don't do it. But that's how I did it. I didn't have any problems. So anyhow, let's go back to the fuel system. Let's start at the front. Okay, right up here on the outside of the machine is your fuel selector knob for on, off, reserve. And it's inside the machine here. There's 3 lines hooked up in there, if you can see them. Those 3 lines way up there. The top one's reserve, the middle one is just the fuel supply. That's always fuel coming through that one way or another. And the bottom line is just the regular on supply that goes, you know, your regular supply that when you first run out of gas, that's what that line is. And in both of those lines come from the fuel tank, but they also run through, when it's on, either reserve or on, the fuel is running through this line right here that I'm tapping with my trouble light hanger through the filter, and then exits out the back here and goes to the carburetor. And consider the two lines that are hooked up to the selector, consider them a supply line that comes from this apparatus that goes down inside the fuel tank. So let me see if I can explain what those hoses are. Okay, so there's two red wires coming back towards me on the bottom of your screen there. This line right here is a vent line. It goes to a T that has two vents on it, one up on the top of the machine and one on the side. They both do the same job, they're vent. This one here is the reserve line. It's the fuel supply that supplies the reserve fuel selector, and then the fuel then goes through your fuel filter to the carburetor. This one here is the regular on, just the first fuel supply before reserve, the main fuel supply. And it goes up to the fuel selector, through the fuel selector, to the fuel filter, and then back to the carburetor. This line here is a return line from the carburetor. When the carburetor is pressurized fully, it gets gas as well as pressure from the pulse pump and keeps this tank pressurized. Again, I'm not a mechanic. You know, if you work with this stuff all the time and you're actually a technician, you might go, oh, he's full of it, but this is how I see it, so take it or leave it. So again, your fuel supply ultimately ends up going through this filter. After the fuel selector, it goes through this filter here, and then it goes back to the carburetor on this line right here. That carburetor, that fuel line enters the carburetor in this line right here. It's basically, its elevation goes, there's three lines back there. It enters in the carburetor on the middle line, the one that has middle elevation back there. And I guess in my picture now, looking at it through the screen, it's actually the middle line. That's your fuel supply to the carburetor. It gets fuel from the on selection on the hand selector valve and the reserve. They're both the same. Once it gets back here, you consider that both the same. The fuel line closest to my thumb right here is a return line that gets the fuel and the pressure back to the fuel tank. The line on the back of it's a very short line that goes to the crankcase on the engine, creates pressure to the pulse pump. The pulse pump pressurizes the carburetor to some PSI, I would guess somewhere in 40 PSI range, at which time the needle pops out of the seat and allows fuel to go into the carburation system of the engine. So there you have it. That's the fuel system on the machine. It has one carburetor. That's beautiful. I get tired of working on the ones that have 2 or 3 carburetors on them, and I've got a couple machines that are like that. But I hope I didn't make that a big confusing mess, and I hope that helps you. And I guess all I can really say about this job is don't be afraid to tackle it. It's not hard. I'm not hard at all. And thanks for watching.